I feel like I'm too old for 6'7" and too young for Live, Laugh, Love. And I'm starting to not be able to relate to my older millennial cat meme Facebook sharing cousins, but I also can't fully connect to my brain rotted, TikTok minded Gen Z homies. There's this big duality, especially as someone like me who spends way too much time online, two internets, two vibes, two cultures. Like, I remember trying to make a MySpace, and I remember not having smartphones at school, but I also know about Italian brain rot and the grimace shake. I call this the zillennial paradox. This isn't going to be some big think piece or some generational divide solution, but more just some thoughts from a 28-year-old who spends way too much time online and is trying to figure this stuff out. Welcome to Glue FM, ideas, stories, and conversations that help you keep it together. I'm Jesse. Let's get into it. Like I said in the intro, with growing up with the internet kinda and technology and video games, but also being young enough to not remember having the internet on me at all times and smartphones and things like that. I feel like that is why this millennial generation feels very different, because there's a disconnect between being online your whole life and then also people who went through most of their formative years without having to use that stuff at all. I found this word zillennial obviously combines Gen Z and millennial, and it's people that were born roughly from 1993 to 1998. So I know I'm speaking to a very hyper specific niche right here, but I do think still interesting nonetheless. And I was born in 1997, so my childhood was still fairly analog with the mix of digital and stuff in there. Like, I still remember, VHS tapes, specifically the Rugrats orange ones, and having a collection of that stuff and choosing movies that way. But I also grew up enough to go to Blockbuster and rent movies, and then also see, Redbox and Netflix and all that stuff come to fruition, especially back when they were sending you the discs in the mail. I remember playing local multiplayer games with friends, playing PS2 games, Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, bringing over the PS2 multi-tap to play a big-ass game of Star Wars Battlefront or WWE like SmackDown vs. Raw. And I've had cable TV, TiVo, I've gotten that, but I've also lived where we had just landlines, or lived with my dad who didn't have cable at all, and we had the 13 channels or whatever, and I would just hope that Fox would be playing Malcolm in the Middle. I think one of the biggest gaps kind of between I think I'm first Gen Z technically. This millennial thing's like a in-between generation, but I think one of the biggest differences between someone who grows up like around my year and then the actual younger Gen Z people is, I remember the family computer, or a computer that my mom got like used, and the internet being a place that you go to and visit and go online to play like Flash games or do some research for a school project. It wasn't a thing that you lived in all the time and had access to 24/7 with this unlimited cycle of information. And I think that is kind of where we lost the plot. As I got into my adolescence and just kind of teenage years, whatever you want to call it, became more of a digital acceleration. I remember my first texting type phone, like the slide up ones, like the Rumor or the Verizon NV, like flip open one, even the crazy like Sidekick. Slide up keyboards, texting really fast under the desk at school. I remember when the iPods came out, that was so dope, especially when you were out like skating and stuff. And then the ultimate combo before the iPhone was having the iPod Touch with like Kick messaging, Snapchat, early days of like Instagram, touch grind games, all the games. And then you had your texting phone still too, but you had to have both of those kind of on you at all time. And the iPods had like 8 gigabytes or something. I was on the tail end of MySpace, so I didn't use that much, but I definitely remember using Facebook and early Instagram. Early Instagram really felt like the three things I think that took over my middle school and high school were early Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. Snapchat for parties, talking to girls, whatever, like people selling drugs. And then Twitter would be, I swear we used Twitter like a fucking giant group chat. It felt so local back then. Like I would just at my homies like, yo, come over. And then, Facebook we used, but I feel like that quickly became like a millennial boomer thing, like fast. Like we kind of were like, oh, Instagram is our shit. And now I feel like the Gen Z and Gen Alpha think Instagram's for old like unks like me, and they use only TikTok and shit. So I don't know. I think the big difference with the internet and this technology stuff is that the older millennials knew a high school world without any of that, without any social media. And then Gen Z never knew a world without it. So I think the bigger difference for the zillennials is we didn't skip the online internet generation, and we didn't grow up only it ever existing, but we saw it form and kind of turn into what it is today. Yeah, I don't know. Middle school and high school social media was funny. I remember the early Instagram filters, using Twitter, like I was saying, like a freaking giant group chat. They even had these rumor pages in my high school that were like just awful shit to talk shit, anonymous things about people, like blah 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 is a whore or something, just because some girl like had a boyfriend or kissed someone or whatever. But early internet was sick. I loved the old Instagram filters. I loved being able to post just a square. I would be saying like Saturday, hashtag chillin', hashtag swag, hashtag something. And we'd have like these dumbass, before 6'7" and brain rot and all that, we had like 69 obviously, but even people just yelling like 1738, like because of the Fetty Wap songs. Like, I don't know. So like, I understand this like younger Gen Alpha and Gen Z stuff as a concept, and I get it, and I maybe don't fully understand all the nuances, and maybe I'm later to it, even though I'm on the internet too much, but I don't need to understand. I don't feel like the older millennials who are like, I just don't get it. Like 6'7", what the fuck does it mean? Like, I understand how I still thought back then. I feel like I can remember and put myself in that position of being a younger kid like that. But yeah, that era was sick. All swag era, right? Jerking, Wiz Khalifa, Tisa, Lil Wayne, like all that shit. Like the swag era with the bull snapback, Mitchell and Ness, super tall. You got another snapback on your camo shorts, and you got double Nike socks and some Chuck Taylors with the laces all loose, like shit like that. And maybe like a pro club and a wooden rosary, right? And the internet was cool because even though people were following trends and doing what everyone else was kind of doing around them on a local level or in their school, it still felt like people were posting without algorithms. Stuff was social, stuff was fun. And I feel like us zillennial generation kind of remembered the internet as this smaller, more intimate, and more personal thing. It was less optimized, less monetized, and definitely more unserious. Yeah, we have memes and stuff now and meme pages, but I feel like we used to create our own memes and our own shareable moments, but on a local level, like getting a Snapchat or seeing an Instagram story from a party you were at of your friend that you knew there that was like drunk and passed out on someone's hood of their car or whatever. And all the photos back then had this very unique digital grain to them that I can't really put my finger on, but it's kind of warm. And today now, everything is content, everything's strategic. Some of the biggest pages on Instagram or whatever are companies. Everything feels very loud. And I think, all generations, all three, the Gen Z, millennials, and us zillennials somewhere in the middle, yearn for a time like that and want to have some stuff that's more fun and stripped away from the AI and the hyper consumerism of it all. Brands use social media too much, honestly. I think that's what it is. So yeah, I don't know, being stuck between these two things, this isn't like some existential crisis or anything that I'm dealing with. Like, I don't need an identity to be in either of these. I just know I'm like, they call it a cusper or whatever, because I think 1997 is the very first Gen Z, like the youngest version, or sorry, the oldest version. And then people that are my homies who are 96, 95, I think they're one of the last millennials, I believe. Like that movie, The Last of the Mohicans, The Last of the Millennials. We need to do that. But yeah, I know a lot of older people from school, from college, from family. When I say older, I mean like anywhere from 2 to 5 years older than me. So I have a good experience hanging out with those people. Also, though, ever since I got more into this internet creator stuff and met a bunch of dope people through online things like Creator Camp and whatever, I've met a lot of dope friends who are skew younger, like anywhere from 24 to 26, 23, even 21. I've met some people like I don't hang out with these kids all the like young ass kids all the time, but sometimes there's a big gap, right? At least 5 years, give or take each way, of people that I know. And so, the millennial leaning people, I feel like it's very what you would think it was, right? You have friends and you can know they're more that way. Like they have a pretty good salary tech job, an email job, I call it. Like they just kind of do meetings and message people on Slack all day. Yeah, but they get their money, whatever. That they might share a cat meme that is reminiscent of something that your mom or aunt would send you. They have a personality sometimes coded in like a chain drink brand like Starbucks or something. They live, laugh, love kind of aesthetic in their house. Facebook core humor, very easily confused by AI generated videos, and they'll share a inspirational AI generated post of a cartoon character or a famous actor saying, you know, it'll all like you'll make it through at the end of the day, or some shit like that, and basically like stuff that would have went triple platinum on Ellen, back maybe 8 years ago. One thing I will respect though about the older people I know, like they know what they're about, and whether I like some stuff people do or not, it's authentic, I think. And then you have the Gen Z leaning people I know, brain rot humor, like everything is kind of nonchalant and unserious and a joke. They're also big advocates though. They post a lot of stuff they believe in. They're the people who post all the Instagram infographics about rallies and mobilizing their audience, stuff like that. Twitch streamers, watching live stuff. I noticed that Gen Z people create content or talk about things as if everyone knows it, but it might just be something that their generation knows. Like they don't even care to explain something. Like they'll be like, yo, that's crazy that Kai Cenat or whatever did this. Like, and then they'll put like an inside joke or something, but everyone doesn't need to get it because the algorithm will kind of have it find what it needs to do. Yeah, and just like a lot of hyper online slang, chopped, yacht, unk, 6'7", fucking chud, chuz, huz, like all that shit, that you see on TikTok and whatnot. And there's probably people watching this. If any of my younger audience is like, what the fuck? He doesn't know. Like he doesn't even know blah, 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 blah. Like I'm probably not there yet. I'm probably late to the terms now that are being used. But I think a lot of these phrases I technically understand, but I'm definitely late to. But even when I don't get them, I understand the context, and it's easier for me to decipher it because I think I've been online a lot. But I know they've been saying 6'7" for a while, like before you saw your uncle at Christmas being like, I just don't get it, And one thing is like I noticed people my age in this 25 to 28, let's say, or 25 to 30, let's say, people that age right now, they really lean either way. You can tell the people who feel a lot more Gen Z, and you can tell who the people are that feel a lot more millennial and kind of are starting to feel like your older cousins and shit. So I think this zillennial generation that I'm in, even though sometimes it feels like this weird limbo and paradox space, I also think that we're kind of the translators in the room. Because if you're able to connect to a younger than you and an older than you generation, I think that's a really powerful tool. And as long as you don't get sucked into either side too much, I think you have the luxury of living in both worlds and then just being able to connect with even more people. One thing I'll say about Gen Z that I want to give a lot of credit, especially compared to my generation and especially compared to millennials and boomers and so on, they have, since they've always grown up with the internet and online and no social media, like kind of probably since it existed, they have a really strong digital literacy. I think they know what's AI. They know what's true. They know what's like fake or real news. They can spot ads even when they're nonchalant. Like the nice try Diddy shit, all the comments you see on like paid partnership stuff on Instagram. And that's so valuable to be able to know when a brand is trying to speak to you or spotting misinformation and just having an understanding of the information you're seeing and knowing how to know what to take serious or not, essentially. And I think that they understand irony and this meme sharing culture in so many layers and nuances that it allows for almost a larger pool of media and kind of cool, like, inside stuff that I get to consume. Contrast to that, though, as much credit as that can be, I think because of those things, they also have this constant exposure. Everything is constant irony. Nothing can be serious. Everything's a bit. Nothing is genuine and earnest. I think the generation that I'm in right now is we're fluent and most of us have the digital literacy, but we're almost too tired to put on this cool act anymore and this nonchalant thing. And we kind of just want to be ourselves. Sometimes, though, I think the more you start to be authentic and be yourself and risk by showing up, the younger kids may think you're whack, or you can start turning into the boomers or whatever. And fuck it. But I think zillennials understand all this stuff on a system level. The irony, the memes, the seriousness, digital literacy, blah, blah. But we also remember when things were better and simpler, like I was talking about with the early social media. So maybe we've given up because we yearn for that time and we've kind of become apathetic, where if you don't know that time, you're kind of like, this internet's cool, this is fine. But I have also seen younger kids like with that feeling of nostalgia. And, I noticed a lot of Gen Z kids and Gen Alpha, they're nostalgic. They're really nostalgic for a time that they haven't lived in. So it's like, I don't know what you call that, if that's nostalgia, but I've seen posts of like that swag era that I lived in high school, and like a young kid being like, dude, that looks so lit. Like, I wish I lived in this time. And I think people always look back to the past like that, because I remember looking in the 90s and early 2000s in high school with people recording on those old camcorders and stuff, and thought that looked like a really dope time to live in with 90s punk and skateboarding culture and all that stuff. I think one of the bigger divides too between these generations for sure is going to be like fashion and your aesthetic and your overall identity. I think millennials are a lot more reserved, follow a lot more of the fashion trends that them and then the people above them follow. Very clean. They feel like actual adults. I feel like a little kid still trying to be an adult. Or maybe I'm fucking reached that point, right, where I feel like I'm the how do you do, fellow kid Steve Buscemi. I hope not, but they're more clean, kind of adult, dad core, mom core type shit. Like they share. We did it when they're tucked in polo and, the wife pregnant in front of a house they bought in Arizona, like that type of shit. Where Gen Z right now, I think, is kind of on that Y2K revival, the streetwear kind of 2000s revival too, with baggy pants, Carhartt, the whole performative male thing, and ironic kind of self-presentation and like a fucking Minion shirt or whatever. I think the tension that I kind of live in is I really value my individuality, and I like the things that I like, right? I like hardcore music. I like fashion. I like wearing the things that make me feel like me and make me feel good. But I don't want to be like too old or too an adult, but I don't want to feel like a kid but I don't want to feel like an older dude who's trying to cosplay being youth or like cling on to what's cool. So I think at the end of the day, you just got to kind of find the things you like and stay true to it, but allow them to adapt a little bit as you age and become more refined and maybe a little more core and strip back and kind of like solid instead of like you look like you're always experimenting or whatever. One thing that I really think became this invisible kind of divide between these generations that isn't spoken about enough other than the health concerns and things is COVID, right? Many Gen Z kids missed huge chunks of middle school or high school while it was COVID. I can't even imagine having to not go to high school because of something like that. Like those kids were definitely hanging out outside of school and at the skate park and stuff, I think. I know my friends would have, but if you were about to go into high school and you never got to experience that, like you missed your freshman and sophomore year, that seems so bad for your social development. And you're missing a lot of those formative social experiences, even if they're bad, even the stuff that sucked and made me feel terrible that happened in high school, a lot of good stuff too. I am glad it all happened and it made me who I am. Whereas zillennials, we've had these shared human moments in middle school and high school, and we share this with the millennials. Like we both went through this. We both went through awkward dances. We've both been bored. We've both played video games, went to the movies, learned how to socialize in person. There was cliques. There's football players, people who did drugs, people who did nerds, whatever. Like I feel like I kind of lived in all that, but learning to socialize and be around other people, that seems so important. And I think that's what really is that disconnect between the millennial and the Gen Z generation is that like that Gen Z stare thing, and they're kind of put offish and quieter and less small talks. And yeah, I think the millennial people are too talkative sometimes, but there is a good middle ground, and hopefully people our age can kind of live in that and be those translators. But definitely more guarded social energy. Like I feel a lot more social than the younger people, but way more reserved than the older ones. And landing in the middle is a weird place to be. I'm not better than either generation, obviously. I'm Gen Z. This isn't about being the connectors of generations or whatever, but I'm not bitter. Like as I get older, I'm not sad that I understand less and less of what the younger kids are talking about. And I also don't really yearn to be in the generation above me. Like I'm glad where I am and I'm happy to be kind of in this world that I'm in, but it's not in a superior way. It's just like being content with the age you are as you gracefully grow through life. And yeah, there's, this in-between feeling that I'm still trying to get over, but everything's cyclical. It's going to feel this way for all the generations. We've all had our dumb jokes, memes. We're not special. No one's that different from each other, and no one's better. We're just kind of uniquely positioned along this timeline in life. I feel like the really core feeling to encapsulate how it feels to be this kind of zillennial generation is remembering where things came from, but also being excited to try to figure out where they're going. And I would be super curious to feel where you land. If you're in this age gap, do you feel more Gen Z, more millennial, more boomer, more Gen Alpha? Whatever generation you were born in listening to this, I would love in the comments to hear where you feel like you align with. Like, do you feel like you align with the people in your own generation? Or do you feel like you're an old soul or whatever they call it? Or do you feel like you're young at heart? Or are you stuck in the middle somewhere like me, trying to figure it out? But that's a wrap on this one. Please like, follow, subscribe, rate, all that stuff on Glue FM. It really helps out. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Peace.